Jobs, not mobs, part of President Trump's message at these rallies to close out this election cycle over the weekend and, of course, into today.
Some think he's focusing too much on the caravan, which, by the way, over the weekend, Homeland Security said there are 12,000 people in this caravan, people from 20 different countries. But, yes, of course, he's touting the economy.
They all say, speak about the economy, speak about the economy. Well, we have the greatest economy in the history of our country. But sometimes it's not as exciting to talk about the economy, right?
I'm excited to talk
It's
about
exciting when you get 250,000 jobs, as was the October jobs number, and you get wage growth continuing to tick up 3.1% this year. So the other thing that's exciting about it, per Larry Kudlow, Trump's top economic advisor, over the weekend on with Maria Bartiromo, is that it's reaching down into blue-collar jobs in terms of the wage increases, the good economic times, the growth.
I'm not worried. I mean, I hear all this stuff about a sugar high and temporary and not sustainable. I mean, for one thing, that 250,000 gain in employment, which was, a blockbuster. I remember I told the president about it Thursday evening. He said, whoa. And Kevin Hassett and I were really surprised. Look, you got 3.1% rise in wages. You got 250,000. We're running solidly. You know who the biggest beneficiaries are, Maria? Blue-collar workers. Take a look at the numbers. The employment increase is largely centered on blue-collar workers. They're the big winners, fastest since the 80s. And they are the ones experiencing the largest wage gains. Blue-collar workers have beaten white-collar workers.
Right.
I have nothing against white-collar workers. I'm just saying this is a very depth, it's reaching down deep into the blue-collar area. That is precisely what we wanted with our supply-side tax cuts across the board and deregulation of the president's program.
Yeah, but
it
you
is
just heard,
working,
you just heard
including
Democratic.
energy.
It's working, and they're noodling on an additional middle-income tax cut that the president had sort of proposed off the cuff. That's
right.
Under consideration. And then the other big issue, the thing that arguably is not working, I would argue, at least unless you get to where Larry Kudlow wants it to go, which is a lower tax, lower tariff environment for trade, is the matter of the skirmish on trade between China and the United States. Kudlow saying to Bartiromo, this is going to be a topic. President Xi of China and President Trump will discuss this at the upcoming G20 summit at the end of this month.
It is now certain that the two presidents will discuss trade at the G20 meeting in Argentina. That's a good, positive, optimistic thing. Now, look, I spoke to President Trump yesterday, okay? We had a long talk about the China position. He believes that China's weakening economy, by the way, their PMI is down to 50, so that shows they're on the cusp here of a recession. Anyway, President Trump believes China would like a trade deal. And President Trump is the first president in decades to push this issue. We're not going to let them get away with unfair and illegal trading practices. Now, having said that, President Trump told me he would make a deal with China, okay? But it has to be a deal that is strong and in America's interest.
Yeah, well, that stands to reason. The question is, what does that look like? For more on both of these topics, pleased to be joined by CNBC contributor Jim Iuorio, also the proprietor of Brant's in Palatine.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Great hamburger there, I'm told, by Jim.
We need
and
to
others.
do a live remote from there.
We should.
The better.
Yeah, or
I want one of those burgers, and I'd like to meet you in person.
Or he could have, Uber Eats some burgers out to us.
That would be nice, or stop by.
No.
I like my medium.
No, I have to go. No, not.
You don't.
He's not doing
you don't
that.
do road trips.
I won't let them Uber Eats it out to you. You have to come to Brand.
There you go. Got to eat it fresh. There you go.
Right.
So, Jim, one thing Larry Kudlow said that follow-up, I think, is demanded. China on the cusp of a recession. He's describing China's weakening economy. Well, China in recession is not good for the United States, is it?
No, not at all. And when you look, you mentioned the trade tariffs before too, and Xi took a a little bit of a swipe at Trump last night, which I'm sure is probably logical considering we have elections a day away. If the elections go the way of the conservatives, I think Xi's attitude may change afterwards. But the reality is this. Remember, if we get a recession in this country, people go to the ballot box and remove politicians. If they get a recession in China, they can withstand a recession in China, and the people don't have to worry about re-election quite as much as us. All they have to worry about is at some point revolution if they drive the economy too far into the ground, which I mean, I'm hoping is far off there. So this, like you said, this is of all the things, the macroeconomic policies I agree with 100%. The tariffs thing I don't agree with 100%. If it works, that's going to be beautiful and wonderful, and I'll be glad to be wrong, but I worry about it.
Well, how long do you think it's going to take to work itself out?
Well, I spoke to Larry on Friday, and by the way, I am not above name dropping. I hope you guys know that.
No.
You just name dropped very well, by the way.
We
okay.
tell everybody
well.
after you're on the show that you were on the show.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Well, I spoke to Larry on Friday, and he wants people to understand that this is going to be a long process. And his theme is just say yes to something, meaning China. You know what I mean? Just start this ball rolling. And if we do get a yes on anything, it's what was implied in his speech was that the ball will be rolling in the right direction and things will move. But, again, we got to get that yes.
Well, but if you see a significant market correction in 2019, for example, and you see perhaps GDP growth slowing a bit, that puts a lot of pressure on President Trump to make a move, particularly if, for example, you've got a divided Congress, which is a possibility.
Without question. If that happens, I do believe. But I think everything is going to be spun in the media. So, we'll probably go back to where we were before and then claim victory in that we sent a message to China that we're not going to be messed with anymore. And I guess that's fine. But, yeah, if market corrections will change things. Not only will they change things from an administration standpoint, they change things from the Fed as well. Fed doesn't like when risk assets are declining. I'm surprised that they've withstood this recent volatility and not changed their tone at all. And I think we're very close to having them do that if we see any further, stark downside.
Do you think in the last, 34 hours before the election day that President Trump should be pushing the accomplishments of the economy more than he is immigration or this caravan?
I know that's what I would. And by the way, the single most important thing of the economic story is being left out everywhere I heard it, and I cannot stress this enough. When we talk about the good job numbers, we talk about the good GDP numbers, we have to also talk about the fact that 2-year yields in this same time that Donald Trump has been elected president have gone from 0.8 to 2.9. The implications of that means that the financial markets believe in supply-side economics. They believed it from the day he was elected, and they continue that belief now. A 2.9 2-year yield is amazing, and that's what Donald Trump always, beats the drum about. Is Barack Obama at times in his presidency had okay GDP numbers, but they were always against the backdrop of unbelievable accommodation from the Fed. To be doing this now with much, much less Fed accommodation is startling. And then when he says things like the greatest economy ever, and then everyone jumps to say, oh, no, it's not, no, it's not. It seriously might be when you take into account the lack of accommodation over the last 2.5 years.
An underreported aspect of the story as well is the wage growth after more than a lost decade for middle-income families. And Kudlow wanted to emphasize that point, that what you're seeing under this economy, the supply-side tax cuts and deregulation, is growth happening in middle-income and specifically blue-collar families, those families who frankly put Trump in the White House in the Midwest. Is that a statement with which you agree?
Without any question at all. I mean, it's absolutely working. And guess what? It's working just like the book said it was. When you institute supply-side trickle-down, do the rich get richer? Yeah, the rich get richer. It's a cost of doing business and that type of economic policy. But that's the beauty of it, is that it really does trickle down. You say, oh, it didn't work after the Reagan thing. Sure, it worked. Yeah, maybe it was a little too concentrated on the high end, and maybe it can be adjusted. But of course, injecting money in the economy has absolutely worked. Anyone who takes the other side of that wrong, I mean, this is a short debate. We win. Supply side worked.
Our colleague and your friend Scott Shellady was on the show on Friday. We were talking about the jobs numbers, and one of the things he said is that you get continued jobs numbers like this and wage growth and labor participation upticks, then maybe the Fed will be able to address the thing that frightens many on Wall Street the most, including Rick Santelli, which is unwinding from a decade of quantitative easing, of easy money. Is that your view as well?
Sure. Yeah, and that's obviously terrifying. And I don't, we've never been in this situation before where the Fed has a $4 trillion balance sheet, and what the hell they're going to do with it, I have no idea. Oh, sorry if I said that on air, and that's bad. But hopefully,
that's right.
Hopefully they can let a lot of it wind down, and hopefully they can, if they're going to actually, call a primary dealer and say, make me a market on $1 trillion worth of bonds, I think that the market couldn't withstand that. So they're going to have to come up with non-conventional ways to unwind as well.
All right, so I was at this investor conference on Friday,
show off. What did you learn?
I got to put my money to work if I'm going to get out of this godforsaken state. So one of the presenters makes the point that people buy what they wish they would have bought, and they sell when they're about to need it, with respect to just sort of mistiming the market. And his suggestion is that with unemployment under this low, under 5%, we've never had positive market returns for the 5 years subsequent. And his recommendation is, and belief is, that you're going to see a massive market correction in 2019, that we may even go into recession in 2019, and that your money should be in private investments or cash, not in equities.
No, I didn't hear whose name you said that, but I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
In that there's a bunch of guys who preach this kind of thing. I'm not for it. I think that you can cite a statistic like you did about unemployment, but say that we really had a lost 8-year period, probably even more, of economic growth. So this cycle is going to be a little bit more drawn out than the others as we slowly come out of it. I don't believe in that at all. I think you go with the George Costanza method of buying and selling is the best way. When everybody in the world wants to sell it and every fiber in your brain says sell, you buy. I don't know if you remember that Seinfeld episode. It was crazy, but it was some of the best investment advice I've ever heard. And when everybody is buying and your mind says buy, that's probably a time you're supposed to sell.
All right, so ignore the guys managing multi-billion-dollar pension funds and endowments and focus on George Costanza. That's
good.
Probably some of the best financial advice anybody's ever offered.
Best I ever got.
All right, he is Jim Iuorio, CNBC contributor, and if you haven't and you're in the northwest suburban Cook County region, stop by Brandt's for a burger in Palatine. Jim, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.